Hey, what is happening, everybody? It's Wednesday night. Sorry we missed you on Monday. I got stuck doing a bunch of stuff. It always happens. But we're here with you Wednesday. We're ready to talk the Buffalo Bills. And I've got my two favorite guys. I got on my left my man Jeff. Hey, Jeff, how are we doing this evening?
Doing well, brother. Wednesday night, as we always start now, or at least I do. It's time to get out of that kitchen, rattle those pots and pans, right, Joseph?
That's always the way to go, right there. And then down below, my man Joe. Joe, how we doing this evening? What's going on, my man?
Ready to go. That countdown now. I think we're 75 days, if not less than 75 days from the first game of the season. I just asked you about openings in your leagues for fantasy this year. So we're inching closer and closer.
We're getting to that time, man, and that's what I also call my favorite time, man. It's like next Saturday, not this Saturday coming up, but next Saturday I'll be going to Orlando to do a Scott Fish live draft. I'll be in the Scott Fish Bowl live draft over there. Very excited about that. This will be my second year going over there in a row. So
that's like excited. Hundreds of people, right?
Thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah, it's about 4,500 people that are in the Scott Fish Bowl overall. It's a big, huge donation drive. They get so much shit for Toys for Tots, man. It's really cool. It's really something to be a part of. Next year, I'll be able to get you guys a little bit more involved because we're going to be doing a little bit of the side work on that show. So, but that'll be coming up here in a little bit later. And then, so tonight we're just going to go ahead and kick this thing off, guys. We'll go ahead and start talking the Bills. The only real thing yes, they got Justin Shorter, which he's not the worst wide receiver out there. He does have quite a bit to prove, and he does have to go up against Khalil Shakir, which I know Jeff was making fun of just a few minutes ago, but I think Khalil Shakir is probably the clear number 4 on that team. And then
ESPN's got him listed as a 3, Mikey. I was just going to mention it, and I was actually kind of surprised.
Oh, really? Yeah. So I in the depth chart that I'm looking at, I got Trent Sherfield, they got Stephon Diggs, and Gabe Davis sitting in there. So
ESPN's got him ahead of Sherfield, I guess.
That makes sense.
I gotta interrupt for a second. If you're talking to depth chart on the Buffalo Bills, and we'll get into this too, but you got Diggs and that's it. So
you got Gabe Davis.
Okay. I'll get into Gabe Davis's numbers, and he's beyond irrelevant. Especially if you get past Gabe Davis, we might as well be talking about Ava Iarachi starting at, be the 4th wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills, man.
Fair enough.
But I digress.
Well, to go back to what they drafted this year, they drafted Dalton Kincaid. He's a giant tight end out of Utah. I think he might be a difference maker. He's already second in the depth chart behind Dawson Knox. I think you'll see him immediately be an impact into the game. Maybe not so much as a fantasy impact, but an impact because tight ends rarely come out right out the gate and get you anything done. But for dynasty value, I think this guy, if you want to put a 3-year ticker on anybody, it would be this guy. Joe, what did they grab in the free agency?
Yeah, they beefed up. And you like to see a good team do this, kind of address those glaring, obvious needs. They beefed up the defensive line. Their pass rush, especially without Von Miller, really wasn't there. So Shaq Lawson, Jordan Phillips, 2 big signings there on the defense. They beefed up the secondary a little bit too. Offensively, if you're talking fantasy, the one relevant move they made, Devin Singletary moved on to Houston, which I was just thinking that's got to be, you go from the Bills to Houston, it's got to be just such a cultural difference. I don't know why you would make that choice other than more playing time, which I guess I can understand. But now they're going to have, they signed Damian Harris from the Patriots to a 1-year deal. So now you're looking at, it's a really interesting backfield for them this year. It's Damian Harris with Cook in Hines. And, Cook definitely came on last year. And, by the end of the year, actually, Cook was he was their bell cow. Hines, I think people got excited when they made that trade towards the deadline for him. I don't think he ever really got on the field as much as people expected him to, but this 3-headed monster is really, really interesting. Obviously, you think you see Harris and or Cook as like the early down early down backs, goal line backs, and Hines can open it up in the passing game and on third down. It'll be interesting to see. But, thinking about this Buffalo team, and they're a great team, obviously, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Josh Allen, most importantly, obviously. But it's just such an insanely tough division now. Obviously, between, the Dolphins were very good last year, would have been better if their quarterback stayed healthy, should be good again this year. The Jets obviously have improved immensely from last year, and they were good last year, much better last year than they had been the previous years. I think the Patriots are maybe a little bit of an X factor as far as, I could see them being better than last year. I could see them being worse than last year. Whereas I do feel like the Jets in Miami, as long as they're healthy, are going to be very good. So it's a super competitive division. And I know, not to steal Jeff's thunder, but he's right. At wide receiver and, as far as weapons go, it's going to be interesting to see in a really tough division, is it good enough now? Because it's almost not been good enough already. Obviously, they haven't won a Super Bowl, haven't even made it to a Super Bowl, this iteration of this team. Now it's a better division. Gabe Davis really has to step up. They really got to get some consistency from their running game, and the defense has to be better than it was last year, too, for them to really make the noise that I think people are waiting for them to make.
Well, let's not forget what happened at the end of last season too. That kind of knocked a lot of steam out of the sails of this offense and defense. When that guy went down, I can't remember his name for the life.
I know I'm having a brain freeze on it all of a sudden now too. Jeff, this is Jeff's wheelhouse. What is
DeMar
it?
Hamlin.
There you go, DeMar Hamlin. I had DeMar, but I couldn't remember Hamlin. Well, when he dropped, man, and everything like that, that really impacted that team. And I mean, they just never came out with that same fire. So I think they'll be playing with some vindication this year, have a really good chance. And I will just mark it right now. I will be talking about Damian Harris both times they play the Patriots this season because I have a feeling he's going to just torch the hell out of that.
A woman scorned.
For letting good. Yep. I love myself a good revenge game. And he has one of them set up. Okay, Jeff, ruin our day. What are we missing here?
I won't disagree with the revenge game of prior Patriots running backs. And most recently, we saw Dion Lewis. I want to say this might have been 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, where Lewis just put up enormous numbers after getting dropped by the Patriots. I think they played he was on Tennessee at the time. In any case, this division, and obviously we'll get into the Jets, Dolphins, and Patriots another time, but the Jets bringing Aaron Rodgers to this division, does that automatically now make it the most interesting division in football? I think it does. I don't know what you guys think.
I don't foresee Aaron Rodgers making that big of an impact. I think it's going to be one of those things that I think Green Bay is going to be laughing their way to the bank.
But that whole Jet team is good, though. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a big bag of douche, so I don't want to defend him at all. But that whole team is good, right? So they just took the only weak part of that team. They just upgraded to Aaron Rodgers. It's hard to ignore that. I'm not rooting for him by any means, but I don't know. They ain't going 7-10, I don't think.
Didn't the Jets last year have the offensive and defensive rookies of the year?
They did, plus Breece Hall, who got hurt midseason.
Right. I mean, as much as I dislike the Jets, and I will pile on with Joe and say that Aaron Rodgers is just flat out the bag, straight up. But it does make that team way more relevant, that division way more interesting. And the Dolphins, who we thought maybe were a quarterback away from possibly going to the Super Bowl, I'm not even too sure they can, get into second place at this point. So it's an interesting and we're talking about the Patriots now being the most irrelevant team, probably in the basement too. And so this division's interesting. The Bills are interesting. The fact that it's just weird. Their offense is weird. They're a good team. Josh Allen is fantastic. Stephon Diggs, fantastic. Everybody else is like, all right, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah. And you're right. I know where you're going with Davis, and you're 100%. From a fantasy perspective, he has become one of the most frustrating people that's a relevant fantasy performer.
Yeah, and Diggs will put up monster numbers. There's no question. And so will Josh Allen, period. But let's face it, Josh Allen is the team's running back, or at least has been. I'm hoping, well, it should be interesting if they change up the game plan. I would imagine with the addition of Harris that they will, and take the ball out of Josh Allen's hand, at least from a running perspective, a little bit more. Because, if we're looking at stats from last year, Cook, 507 yards, rushing yards, 2 TDs, 180 receiving yards, 1 TD. And then Harris, who, don't get me wrong, he took a big back seat to Stevenson. But, last year with New England, Harris, 462 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 97 receiving yards. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot to improve from a running back standpoint, and that just comes with whether the Bills are willing to have an offensive game plan that takes the ball out of Josh Allen's hands from a rushing standpoint. I don't know what you guys think, but
I think when we watched what happened last year, I think it was around December. So when you saw Josh Allen really take a turn for the worse, he got hit in that. He got hit in about, I want to say in the halfway through the second quarter in the game, and you never saw him throw right the rest of that game. And then further, you never really saw him throw right again the rest of the season. And I believe, if I remember correctly, he had some surgery to get that taken care of in the offseason. I think, nothing major or anything like that, but enough to where I'm sure it was throwing it off. So I bet you are going to see, at least he's going to have to start considering longevity in the future.
Right.
Maybe have to dial back and throw a little bit more often, which with the laser guided rocket arm, he'll be fine. He's really got everything he needs to be able to do it. And so I think you're right there too. I think the addition of Damian Harris is a for sure show that you're going to see a lot less rushing out of Josh Allen. You're going to see a lot more of a balanced rush pass attack with James Cook and Damian Harris. I think Damian Harris was a huge add.
Well, and just tying into that, a lot of people don't realize, Josh Allen had 27 turnovers last year. He had 14 interceptions and 13 fumbles. So, obviously, so he's a little bit careless maybe when he's rushing with the ball. He's not exactly like a Daniel Jones kind of, we expect him to.
He'll get unmuted when he's ready to talk nicer about Josh Allen, Joe.
I love it. This would be like if somebody was like complimenting Myles Gaskin.
Right, you can't compliment Myles Gaskin, but you can't trash talk the man himself. Come on now. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay,
carry on though. Carry on. No, because you're
on a brighter note, Mike. The guy had 4,283 passing yards, 35 passing touchdowns, 762 rushing yards, which was third in the league for quarterbacks behind Fields and Lamar Jackson. Now, he was only 2 yards behind Lamar Jackson, but about 400 yards behind Justin Fields. That's how much of a monster Justin Fields is as a rushing quarterback. And he had 7 rushing touchdowns. So the guy is a fantasy machine, and certainly, quarterback-wise, a first-round pick with Mahomes, and you can debate some other ones, but those two for sure, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think. I know we have our opinions on quarterbacks, where to take them and where not to, but those two guys.
I think Josh Allen's like a tie. I think you got Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Christian. I think Josh Allen has got to be a first round.
I think Josh Allen for sure. And anybody who knows me knows I love Josh Allen. But realistically speaking, I think Josh Allen here for sure. But now let's say that we do take a hit in the running game and he has to scale back and just throw it a little bit more. That might change my mind about that. That might be something I consider next year because we saw Patrick Mahomes have to do that. He had to take that big step back and he's not able to do as much. Now, he still gets enough done with his legs. But not as much to be like a fantasy relevant quarterback runner.
Those goal line carries that these quarterbacks started to get last year, whether it was Jalen Hurts or it was Josh Allen. Even like the year before, Ryan Tannehill had a bunch of, rushing. Daniel Jones had a bunch of rushing touchdowns. I don't know if I'm not sure I expect to see that again this year. I was looking real quick though at their running back situation from like an ADP perspective. And like, I'm looking at Fantasy Pros right now and they got Cook at 32 and Harris at 39 from a running back perspective. It'll be real interesting to see, 3 weeks into the preseason or by mid-August, what the depth chart is reading like at running back for them. Like, is Cook the clear starter? Or is that going to be like a competition in training camp? Because I will say this, for all the reasons that you guys are just talking about, as far as having to preserve Josh Allen, whoever is the number one running back on this team heading into week 1, there's definitely some fantasy value there. If the Buffalo Bill, starting running back was my flex week 1, I think I'm pretty okay with that. I would just like to have a better understanding of what they're thinking. Was Harris, Cook came on so much by the end of last year. You got to believe he's their top priority at running back, but it is a 3-headed monster they have there.
I want to see him sign
Dalvin.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook. Yeah, get Dalvin Cook on that team as well. 2 cooks in 1 kitchen.
Boom. Thank you. Good night.
That is such a dad joke at night.
Thank you. Good night.
So
you should have just signed off.
I've been waiting 16 minutes and 15 seconds to drop that, by the
way. You know what I will say, which I find maybe more interesting than a tight end situation on any other team. There's more hype behind this dude, Dalton Kincaid, than maybe a tight end we've heard about in a long time. We saw what Josh Allen did towards the end of last year with Dawson Knox. I think he had I think it was something like five games in a row where he had at least 1 touchdown. Yep. And from what I've heard, I haven't watched much of this guy, admittedly, and I think he was from Utah, I want to say. So, I mean, I'm not really into Utah football, but I hear this guy's got a ton of hype. He can catch anything. He's fast. What's that?
Is he a soaker?
He's a soaker?
Oh, dude, look, when you get to hear the homework assignment tonight, when you get offline, Google soaking.
Okay. I mean, I was going to make a Mormon joke, but
It is a Mormon joke.
We'll see how much porn pops up on my computer when I just search soaking. But anyways, Kincaid is an X factor. I think he might be a guy. Number one, I think they're going to start him. It seems like they're going to start him over Dawson Knox, if not maybe game 1, possibly game 2 and going forward. But he's a viable, or at least a lot of hype behind him. Maybe not like a Robinson kind of hype, but a lot of hype and might be viable from a tight end standpoint to draft him. Down the line in your drafts coming up. Maybe something like 9th, 10th round, something like that.
Well, I'm going to list all the tight ends that have been a fantasy viable tight end their rookie year. Rob Gronkowski.
Kyle Pitts.
And I'm going to list them in order. And I'm done. So,
Kyle Pitts?
What's that?
Kyle Pitts? I mean,
Kyle Pitts is he had
a good rookie year.
His first 2 years.
I mean, that's one. That's the only one I can really think of there, Mike. But
yeah,
Mark Navarro.
Kyle Pitts. Even Kyle Pitts is a bust his first couple of years. Now, do I think he's going to be a career bust? Absolutely not. But the tight end position is a really complex position where you have to learn not only the pass routes and everything like that, but you have to learn a lot of blocking assignments and things like that because you're out on the field for every single play, whether it's running or passing, and you're involved in every single play, whether or not it's running or passing. So you have to learn a lot of things. And like I said, the only fantasy viable tight end that's ever been in the history in their first year is Rob Gronk. And he was able to come out there and do it. You got a few guys that come out and have like a big game or two throughout the season, but they're not like having week after week. Like we didn't know Travis Kelce, for instance. We didn't know he was going to be the beast that he is right now. Sure. And I really feel like Dawson Knox, he's at that level, that perfect level where he's going to be able to be really fantasy relevant next year. I would take Dawson Knox all day over Dalton Kincaid in a redraft league. Now in a dynasty league, though, Dalton Kincaid, once he learns this system and once he's able to get on top of this thing, woo, look out. But they do say that he's so good that they're scheming him in even into the slot positions where he'll be lining up right next to Dawson Knox. So there, in my opinion, there's your fantasy relevance, is because they're going to be trying to involve this guy in other things other than tight end position.
I don't mean to keep harping on tight ends, but the thing is with tight ends, fantasy wise, once you get past like 3 dudes, it's really a crapshoot. So, I guess maybe I wouldn't say, I guess maybe kind of taking a chance on this guy that something's going to happen, because the chance that like you take I don't know, somebody higher up, Fryermuth or somebody like that, and have that be a boss that's higher, in my opinion, than this guy, Kincaid coming in. It's just tight end is such a crazy.
Absolutely agree with that.
Kincaid's going to be ripe for DFS this year because as soon as Knox gets injured, and he seems to be a little injury prone, Kincaid's going to be a great cheap fill-in starter, as he will be on waivers in any league once Knox goes down. I guess I will. The only other thing I'll say about it, to Jeff's kind of earlier point about the lack of depth chart with wide receiver, and I know they got the rookie Shakir too, but in Trent Sherfield, I mean, he's had his moments in San Francisco. He's been crafty in the red zone for them. I don't really know what that means for him in Buffalo, but they're not deep at wide out. In Gabe Davis, and I don't know, Mike, I'd love to hear what you think. Like, is this the year that Gabe Davis becomes consistent, or is the 2022 Gabe Davis, is that the career Gabe Davis that we're going to see? Because if that's the career Gabe Davis that we're going to see, there's really nothing after Stephon Diggs. So it feels like a guy like Kincaid, even with a healthy Dawson Knox, would have an opportunity to make a dent in the relevance of the offense and maybe not fantasy wise, but like, what is Gabe Davis going to break out, or was last year what we're going to get from him for the next 5 years?
I feel like last year, unfortunately, is going to be more of a representation of what we're going to get. Like, I know, like a couple of years ago when he had those last few weeks where, man, he had like 7 touchdowns or something like that in 3 games. It was something phenomenal. But yeah, we just didn't see that replicate last year. You didn't really see that same chemistry out there. And again, I mean, like, go back to what I said about December, though, where Josh Allen, I feel like, hurt his shoulder. I feel like that took out a lot of what makes Gabe Davis effective, and that's those deep, quick routes. Yeah. And I don't think he was able to hit him on those the way that he needed to. So I'm not hitting the panic button quite yet. I want to see what happens at the beginning of this season. But then after that, no, you're right. I mean, there really isn't a whole lot of depth outside of there. So, yeah, I think if you're going to get this guy as a late flyer, I think you can't lose. I think Dalton Kincaid, I mean, like I said, even if he starts lining up in the slot, you're going to be money ahead, just because you got a tight end and a little bit more involved in a position where you're not having to worry about him blocking every few plays. So,
and I'd also like to say this to anybody who's potentially watching. I'll take the fall on this one. I apologize for so much tight end talk. I know it's not necessarily the most exciting thing. Keep it on me in the comments, please, because that's me for getting this tight end conversation going.
Well, I mean, you said it yourself, though. It's the once you get outside of those top 3, you're kind of missing out. I mean, so it's really hard to navigate. And so it's really good to have these kind of discussions, because it is the rarest and hardest position to actually fill in fantasy football.
Yeah. And in a redraft league, I absolutely strategically, I disagree with the idea of reaching for one of those 3 guys. Kelsey, I don't know. I don't think you can take a tight end in the first couple rounds in a redraft league and put yourself in a good position coming out of the draft. So I'm looking for guys like, late round tight ends that are going to potentially be able to give me 10 points a week or 8 points a week or whatever it is, because I'm not willing to spend the cheese on the good ones.
And I'm the exact same way, and I've tried it the other way before, and it always doesn't the same way.
You can't make any mistakes. You're going to draft a tight end early. You cannot make any mistakes with your running back and wideout picks, prior and after that. But my only one other thing I'm a Giants fan, but real quick with the Bills, and something went viral. I don't even think it was last year. I think it was a year before last year. Like, they clinched a playoff spot. I think they won a game in Denver. So then they flew back to Buffalo in like a blizzard. And there was a video at like 3 a.m. There was like 15,000 people in a blizzard at 3 a.m. at the airport just to cheer them off the plane or whatever. And, and Josh Allen, and he just seems to, it's one of those funny things, like not my favorite team, but I am kind of dying to see these guys win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, like Josh Allen, he'll always be close to my heart, man, just because those 4 years he gave us in Wyoming were just amazing. I mean, being a Wyoming fan, you don't have a whole lot of highlights. It's like, yay, we had Jay Novacek like 20 years ago. And then after that, it was pretty much the end of it, And then, man, this guy comes out of nowhere and becomes one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, at least so far. And I'm really excited to see what this guy can do with the rest of his career, because, man, I can tell you.
And he's got the personality to go with it.
Yeah, he's just an awesome guy. Like, I've actually got to talk to him a few times, because he's, it's not a big place. Wyoming, Laramie has like 4 bars, and the Cowboys party in all of them.
And I'll agree with Joe as far as just I'd like to see, and this is as a Patriots fan, I'd like to see Buffalo win one. Buffalo is a fan base that you respect because they're so loyal and such a rabid fan base that you really want to cheer for them. So it would be good to see, if the Patriots can't be relevant, which doesn't seem like they are going to be, it would be interesting to see Buffalo, get something done, whether it's this year or next couple of years, because it's a city that kind of deserves a championship.
That city will burn that night too, because that's how Buffalo party. But I love it. I agree. I think they do. I think they deserve that. I think they have one coming, and I think, they definitely have a team that's just maybe one or two pieces outside of solving that final puzzle, and they proved it year after year. So I'm very excited to see what they're going to do. With that, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. We got almost a half hour into this one. We'll go ahead and kick this thing out. Guys, make sure you're following us on Twitter. Make sure you're giving us 5-star Apple reviews, Apple Podcasts, all those fun things. Even if it's a mean review, give us a 5-star review. And because it really helps out shows like this get going and get a little bit more not transparency, a little bit more following out there and get a little bit more people. So subscribe, do your part. For me, Joe, Jeff, guys, thank you so much for joining me again this evening, and you guys have yourselves a good night, and thank you again, everybody, and we will see you on Monday, where we'll be talking about the Patriots.